The sun was burning hot on the African desert. It was so hot that you could see the air moving in waves above the sand, like invisible water dancing in front of your eyes. The temperature was over 120 degrees, hot enough to cook food on the ground if you left it there for just a few minutes. This was the kind of heat that killed animals. This was the kind of heat that could steal a life in just a few hours. Marcus Richardson was driving his old white Jeep across this terrible landscape, looking for animals to photograph. He had been doing this job for 15 years, traveling across Africa, watching animals in nature, and taking pictures that told their stories. But today, something was going to happen that would change his life forever. Today, Marcus was going to find something that nobody expected to find alive in this desert heat. As his Jeep went over a small hill of sand, Marcus saw something that made his heart stop. There was a small brown shape lying on the ground near some old acacia trees. The shape was not moving. The shape looked dead. Marcus pressed his foot on the brake, and the Jeep came to a quick stop, sending up a small cloud of dust. He sat for a moment, not moving, just looking at what he had seen. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel because he had a very bad feeling about what was lying there in the hot sand. Marcus jumped out of the Jeep, and the heat hit him like a wall. His boots sank into the burning sand as he ran toward the small shape. As he got closer, his eyes grew wide because he could not believe what he was seeing. It was a baby giraffe. A tiny, tiny baby giraffe, no more than 3 or 4 days old. The little animal was lying completely still in the sand, and Marcus could only see its side moving up and down very slowly. The baby giraffe was still breathing, but just barely. The animal looked like it was already dead, but it was not quite dead yet. Marcus knelt down in the hot sand next to the tiny giraffe, and tears started to come to his eyes. He had seen many animals in his life, both healthy animals and dead animals. But this was different. This was a baby animal that was suffering, a baby animal that had been left alone to die in one of the worst places on earth. The little giraffe's legs were bent in a very strange way. The front legs were twisted and curved, not straight like they should be. This was not normal. This was not how baby giraffes were supposed to look. Marcus touched the little giraffe very gently, checking to see if the animal was still alive. The baby's skin was hot, too hot, burned by the sun. The little animal's breathing was very shallow and very weak. Marcus knew that he did not have much time. Every minute that passed, every second in this burning heat, the baby giraffe was getting closer and closer to death. Marcus had learned a lot about animals in his 15 years of work, and he knew that a baby giraffe in this condition would not live more than a few more hours, maybe not even a few more minutes. But there was something else that Marcus noticed that was even more strange and more sad. There was no mother giraffe anywhere around. There were no tracks in the sand showing where the mother had gone. There were no signs that anyone had come to help this baby. The mother giraffe had left her baby here to die alone. This was not something that a mother animal wanted to do, but Marcus knew why this had happened. The baby's twisted legs meant that this little giraffe would never be able to stand up and drink milk from its mother. The baby would never be able to run with the other giraffes. The baby would be a burden and a danger to the whole family. In the wild, animal mothers do not think about love the way that human mothers do. They think about survival. If a baby cannot survive on its own, if a baby will make the whole family weaker, then the mother must leave that baby behind. It is a hard rule of nature, a rule that does not care about sadness or pain. It is just the way that animals survive in a place as hard and mean as the desert. Marcus knew what he had to do. He knew that he could not leave this baby here to die. He could not walk back to his Jeep and drive away and pretend that he had not seen this small, helpless animal. His heart would never forgive him if he did that. But Marcus also knew that taking this baby giraffe would not be easy. It would not be a quick thing. It would change his entire life for the next several months. It would mean giving up his work as a photographer. It would mean giving up his free time. It would mean working every single day to try to save this one animal's life. Marcus reached into his pocket with shaking hands and took out his satellite phone. His fingers were sweating so much that he could barely hold the phone. He knew exactly who he needed to call. He had worked with the Nairobi Wildlife Conservation Center many times before. These were people who had the skills and the equipment and the knowledge to help an animal like this. These were people who might actually be able to save this baby giraffe's life. Marcus's voice was shaking when he spoke into the phone. He told the person on the other end that he had found a baby giraffe in the desert, and it was dying. He described exactly where he was. He described how the baby's legs were twisted and bent. He described how the little animal was unconscious and barely breathing. He explained that the mother had abandoned the baby, and there was no time to waste. The person on the phone was Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the head of the Wildlife Center. She listened carefully to everything that Marcus said. Then she told him that they would send help immediately. She told him to do everything he could to keep the baby giraffe alive until the rescue team arrived. She told him that they would send doctors and nurses and special equipment, and they would do everything possible to save this animal. After he hung up the phone, Marcus looked at the tiny baby giraffe lying in the hot sand. He made a promise to that little animal. He promised that he would not let it die. He promised that he would stay with it, that he would care for it, and that he would help it survive. And then Marcus did something that would take all of his strength, all of his determination, and all of his heart for the next 16 hours. Marcus sat down next to the tiny baby giraffe in the hot sand, and he made a decision that would change the next 16 hours of his life completely. He was not going to move. He was not going to leave this small animal alone. He was going to stay here, in this burning heat, and he was going to do everything in his power to keep the little giraffe alive until help arrived. Marcus did not know how long it would take for the rescue team to come. Maybe they would arrive in 2 hours. Maybe they would arrive in 10 hours. Maybe they would not arrive in time at all. Marcus took off his shirt and used it to make a small tent over the baby giraffe, trying to block out some of the sun's terrible heat. The sun was still burning his own skin, but he did not care about himself anymore. All he cared about was keeping this little animal alive. He reached into his jeep and grabbed bottles of water and a small dropper that he used sometimes for medical emergencies with animals. He mixed the water with some electrolyte powder that he always carried with him. Electrolytes were important salts and minerals that animals needed when they were very sick and very dehydrated. Very carefully, Marcus used the dropper to put small drops of the electrolyte water into the baby giraffe's mouth. The little animal did not swallow at first. Marcus was terrified. He thought maybe the baby was already dead, that he was too late. But then he saw the tiny throat move slightly. The baby had swallowed. The little giraffe was still alive. The animal was still fighting, even though it probably did not know it was fighting. As the hours passed, the sun moved slowly across the sky, and Marcus remained sitting in the sand next to the baby giraffe. Flies came and buzzed around the little animal, and Marcus had to keep waving them away. The heat was so terrible that Marcus could barely think straight. His head was spinning. His skin was turning red. His lips were becoming dry and cracked. But he kept dropping small amounts of electrolyte water into the baby giraffe's mouth every few minutes. He kept the shirt tent over the little animal. He kept talking to the giraffe in a soft, calm voice, even though the baby could not hear him. "You are going to be okay," Marcus whispered to the little giraffe over and over again. "Help is coming. Help is coming. You just have to stay alive a little bit longer. You just have to keep fighting. You are so small, but you are so strong. I can see it. I can feel it. Do not give up now. Do not give up." The hours were passing so slowly that they felt like days. Marcus checked his watch again and again, hoping that time was moving faster than it seemed. But each time he looked, only a few more minutes had passed. The sun was burning hotter and hotter. Marcus was running out of water for the baby giraffe. He was running out of water for himself too, but he did not drink any. He saved every drop for the little animal that was depending on him. Around midday, something terrible happened. The baby giraffe started to have trouble breathing. The little animal's breath became very fast and very shallow. Marcus could see the baby's small chest moving in and out very quickly, like the giraffe was in pain or in fear. Marcus thought that this was the end, that the baby was going to die right here in the sand in front of him. He started to cry. Hot tears came down his face, mixing with the sweat and the dirt on his skin. But Marcus did not give up. He moved the shirt tent to a different position, trying to get more air to flow over the baby giraffe. He continued to give the little animal small drops of water. He kept talking in that soft, calm voice, even though his own voice was breaking with sadness and fear. And slowly, after what felt like an eternity, the baby giraffe's breathing began to slow down. It became less fast. It became less shallow. The little animal was still struggling, but the animal was still alive. The sun was starting to go down when Marcus first heard the sound of an engine in the distance. At first, he thought his tired mind was playing tricks on him, but then the sound got louder and louder. A large truck came over the hill of sand, followed by a jeep with a red cross on it. Marcus felt such a rush of emotion that he could barely stand up. The rescue team had arrived. Help had finally come. 2 vehicles came to a stop near Marcus and the baby giraffe, and people started jumping out before the vehicles had even completely stopped moving. A woman with kind eyes and dark skin came running toward Marcus. This was Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the director of the Wildlife Center. Behind her came 2 younger people, a man named James and a woman named Amelia, who were veterinary technicians. These were people who knew how to take care of sick animals. These were people with training and equipment and knowledge that Marcus did not have. Dr. Okonkwo knelt down next to the baby giraffe without wasting any time. She checked the little animal's heart by putting her hand on the baby's chest. She looked into the baby's eyes with a small light. She felt the baby's legs and examined the twisted shape of them very carefully. She took a small amount of blood from the baby giraffe with a needle, which would be tested later to see what was wrong inside the baby's body. As Dr. Okonkwo worked, her face was serious and thoughtful. She was looking for signs of life, signs of hope, and signs of damage. She was looking at all the things that could be wrong with this little animal, and she was trying to figure out if there was any chance, any possibility at all, that the baby could be saved. After what felt like forever, Dr. Okonkwo looked up at Marcus with an expression that made him hold his breath. She did not smile, but there was something in her eyes that looked like hope. She put her hand on Marcus's shoulder and said something that made his heart jump. "This baby is very, very sick," she said in a quiet voice. "This baby should be dead right now, but this baby is not dead. This baby has a strong heart. This baby has a will to live. I cannot promise that we can save this animal, but I can promise that we will try everything. We will give this little giraffe every chance to survive." The rescue team moved very quickly and very carefully with the tiny baby giraffe. They had done this kind of work many times before, and they knew exactly what they were doing. James and Amelia brought out a special stretcher made of soft material and very gentle straps. This was not a stretcher like the ones used for human people in hospitals. This was a stretcher made especially for animals, designed to hold them safely without hurting them or making them more scared than they already were. Dr. Okonkwo supervised every single movement. She watched as James and Amelia carefully lifted the baby giraffe onto the stretcher. They moved so slowly and so gently that you could barely see them moving. The baby giraffe was still unconscious, still not moving, still barely breathing. But the team treated the little animal like it was the most precious thing in the world, because to them, it was. "Be very careful with those legs," Dr. Okonkwo said to her team. "Do not bend them any more than they already are. Do not put any pressure on them. This baby is already in so much pain, even if the baby cannot show it." Once the baby giraffe was secured on the stretcher, the team brought it to a special vehicle that was waiting nearby. This was not an ordinary truck or jeep. This was a vehicle that had been specially designed to carry large animals. The inside of the vehicle was climate-controlled, which meant that it could keep the temperature cool and comfortable. The floor of the vehicle was made of a special soft material that would not hurt the baby's delicate body. There were straps and supports to keep the stretcher in place so that it would not move around while the vehicle was driving. One of the veterinary technicians, Amelia, climbed into the back of the vehicle with the baby giraffe. She would stay with the little animal for the entire journey, watching it carefully, making sure that nothing bad happened. She would give the baby medicine through tubes, if needed. She would monitor the baby's heart and breathing. She would do everything possible to keep the little giraffe alive during the long drive to the Wildlife Center in Nairobi. Marcus wanted to say goodbye to the baby giraffe. He knelt down next to the stretcher and looked at the tiny animal that he had spent 16 hours caring for in the burning desert heat. The baby giraffe was still unconscious. The baby still looked like it might die at any moment. But Marcus felt like there was a special connection between himself and this little animal. They had been through something together, something that had changed both of their lives. "I am going to follow you," Marcus said softly to the baby giraffe. "I am going to follow you all the way to Nairobi. I am not going to leave you now. You are going to make it. I believe in you." The vehicle door closed, and the team began to prepare for the long journey back to the city. Dr. Okonkwo came over to Marcus and handed him some water and some food. She could see that he was in very bad condition. His skin was sunburned and red. His lips were swollen and cracked. His eyes were tired and sad. But she could also see that this man would never give up on this baby giraffe. "Follow us in your jeep," Dr. Okonkwo said to Marcus. "It is a long drive, many hours, but you should be there when we arrive. This baby is going to need all the help and all the hope that we can give it." The drive from the desert to Nairobi took 8 hours. The landscape slowly changed as they drove. At first, there was nothing but sand and empty space in every direction. Then there were more trees and more grass. Then there were small villages with houses made of clay and straw. Finally, they began to see more roads and more buildings and more people. The city of Nairobi was growing bigger and bigger as they got closer to the Wildlife Center. Inside the special vehicle, Amelia was working very hard to keep the baby giraffe alive. She had inserted a special tube into the baby's nose that went down to the stomach. This was called a feeding tube, and it allowed her to give nutrition directly to the baby without the animal having to eat or swallow on its own. She was giving the baby giraffe a special formula that had all the nutrients and calories that a baby giraffe needed to survive. Amelia was also giving the baby medicine through another tube that went into a vein in the baby's leg. This was called an intravenous line, or IV. Through this IV, the baby was receiving fluids to help with the terrible dehydration. The baby was also receiving antibiotics to prevent infections from developing. These antibiotics were very important because an animal in this condition could easily get a serious infection that could kill it very quickly. But the most important thing that Amelia was doing was simply being there. She was talking to the baby giraffe in a soft, calm voice. She was gently touching the little animal. She was letting the baby know that someone cared about it, that someone was fighting to keep it alive. Even though the baby was unconscious, Amelia believed that the baby could hear her voice and feel her presence. She believed that love and care were important medicines, just as important as any of the drugs or tubes. As the vehicle drove through the night, Marcus followed behind in his jeep. He was exhausted. His body was screaming for sleep, but he would not stop. He would not rest. He kept his eyes open and his hands on the steering wheel. He kept thinking about the baby giraffe in the vehicle ahead of him. He kept thinking about everything that had brought him to this moment. If he had chosen a different route that morning. If he had driven faster or slower. If he had decided to stay in camp instead of going out to take pictures. He would never have found the baby giraffe. The little animal would have died alone in the desert, and no one would have ever known. But Marcus had made a choice. He had chosen to stop. He had chosen to care. He had chosen to call for help. And now, because of that choice, a tiny baby giraffe that should have been dead was alive and on the way to a place where doctors and nurses would do everything possible to save its life. The sun was just beginning to come up when the vehicles pulled through the gates of the Nairobi Wildlife Conservation Center. The building was large and modern, with many different sections for different kinds of animals. As soon as the special vehicle came to a stop, a whole team of people came running out to help. They had been waiting all night, preparing rooms and equipment and medicines for the baby giraffe that was coming. They had been reading the information that Dr. Okonkwo had sent to them during the drive. They knew how sick this baby was. They knew how much help the little animal was going to need. And they were ready to give everything they had to save this baby giraffe's life. The baby giraffe was taken to a special room at the Wildlife Center that had been prepared specifically for the tiny animal. This room was called the Intensive Care Unit, or ICU. It was a place where the sickest animals received the most attention and the best medical care. The room was very clean and very quiet, The temperature was controlled perfectly so that it was not too hot and not too cold. There were machines everywhere that could monitor the baby's heart, the baby's breathing, and the baby's body temperature. Dr. Okonkwo stood in the doorway of the ICU and looked at the baby giraffe lying on the special padded bed. She had a team of 10 people standing behind her, all waiting to hear what she would say. These were veterinarians and nurses and technicians who had trained for years to do this kind of work. They were the best animal doctors in all of Kenya. But even with all their training and all their experience, Dr. Okonkwo knew that the next few days would be critical. The baby giraffe was in the worst possible condition. The baby might die despite everything they could do. "We are going to fight for this baby, Dr. C," Okonkwo said to her team, her voice calm but very serious. "This baby giraffe has already shown us that it has a strong will to live. We are going to match that will with all of our knowledge and all of our skill. Every moment counts. Every decision matters. We do not sleep until this baby sleeps safely and we know it is stable." The team jumped into action immediately. They started checking every part of the baby giraffe's body. They took blood samples and sent them to the laboratory to be tested. They took X-rays of the baby's twisted legs to see exactly how bad the birth defect was. They examined the baby's eyes and ears and mouth. They listened to the baby's heart and lungs with stethoscopes. They measured how much the baby weighed and how tall the baby was. They were gathering information, trying to understand everything that was wrong with this little animal so that they could figure out how to fix it. One of the most important things they did was create a special feeding plan for the baby giraffe. The feeding tube that had been put in during the drive to the city was still in place. Now, the team was going to push a special nutritional formula through that tube every few hours. This formula was made specifically for baby giraffes. It had all the proteins and fats and vitamins and minerals that a baby giraffe needed to grow and be healthy. The formula was going to help rebuild the baby's strength after all the days of starvation and suffering in the desert. But the baby giraffe was still unconscious. The little animal lay on the padded bed, breathing very slowly and very shallowly. For 3 whole days, the baby did not wake up. For 3 whole days, the team watched the baby carefully, waiting and hoping for any sign that the animal might recover. During those 3 days, nurses stayed with the baby giraffe 24 hours a day. They never left the little animal alone, not for a single moment. They talked to the baby in soft, calm voices. They gently touched the baby's body. They did everything they could to let the little giraffe know that it was loved and cared for, even though the baby could not understand. Marcus was there the whole time too. He sat in a chair outside the ICU, waiting and watching through a glass window. He could not go into the room because he was not a trained veterinarian, but he could see the baby giraffe through the window. He could see every breath the little animal took. He could see every movement, no matter how small. He had been with this baby in the desert, and he was not going to leave now. He slept in that chair. He ate his meals sitting in that chair. He watched over the baby giraffe like a father would watch over his own child. On the 4th day, something wonderful happened. The baby's eyes moved slightly beneath the eyelids. The team noticed it right away. Dr. Okonkwo came running into the room. She shined a small light into the baby's eyes and watched carefully. The baby giraffe's pupils responded to the light, getting smaller and then bigger again. This was a very good sign. It meant that the baby's brain was starting to work again. It meant that the baby was beginning to wake up. "Come on, little one," Dr. Okonkwo whispered to the baby. "Come back to us. Come back to the world. We are here. We are waiting for you." And then, on the morning of the 5th day, the baby giraffe opened its eyes. It was not a dramatic moment. The eyes did not open all the way. The eyes were still cloudy and unclear. The baby did not look around or make any movements, but the eyes were open. The baby was awake. The entire team gathered around the ICU and cheered quietly so that they would not startle the little animal. Marcus was called into the room. He came and stood next to the baby giraffe's bed, and tears started running down his face when he saw those eyes open. He reached out very gently and touched the baby's soft fur. "Hello, little one," Marcus whispered. "Welcome back. You made it. You are alive. You are going to be okay." Over the next few days, the baby giraffe became more and more awake. The cloudy look in the eyes went away, and the baby began to look around the room with curiosity. The little animal started to move its head slightly. The baby started to make quiet sounds, soft grunting noises that showed that the animal was becoming conscious and aware of what was happening. Then came the day when something even more amazing happened. The baby giraffe tried to stand up. It was a wobbly, unsteady attempt. The baby's twisted legs could barely support the little animal's weight, but the baby tried anyway. The baby pushed with its back legs and tried to lift its body off the bed. For just a few seconds, the baby was standing, even though the stance was very crooked and very unstable. But the baby was standing. Dr. Okonkwo knew that this was the turning point. The baby was no longer just surviving. The baby was starting to fight. The baby was starting to show that it wanted to live, that it wanted to be strong, that it wanted to be a real giraffe. The team began a new part of the treatment. They started something called physical therapy, which meant moving and stretching the baby's twisted legs very gently every single day. The goal was to try to straighten the legs as much as possible and to help the baby become stronger. As week 2 turned into week 3, the baby giraffe began to eat solid food. At first, the baby showed no interest in the acacia leaves and the special pellets that were offered. But then, one day, the baby's nose twitched when it smelled the leaves. The baby's instincts were waking up. The baby's natural giraffe nature was returning. The baby took a leaf in its mouth and tasted it, and then the baby actually swallowed it. A small amount of real food had gone into the baby's stomach. It was a tiny victory, but it was a real victory. The news of the baby giraffe's progress spread quickly through the Wildlife Center and then spread even faster on social media and the internet. People around the world had been following the story of this tiny giraffe that had been found dying in the desert. Now those same people were celebrating every small victory, every sign of recovery, every moment when the baby showed that it wanted to live. The story of the baby giraffe became a story of hope and determination that touched the hearts of people everywhere. 4 months had passed since the day that Marcus Richardson found the tiny baby giraffe dying in the hot desert sand. The baby, who had been named Rafiki by the staff at the Wildlife Center, was now a strong and healthy young animal. The little giraffe that everyone thought would die had not only survived but had grown into something truly remarkable. Rafiki's coat was now shiny and beautiful, covered in the brown and white spots that all giraffes have. The baby's eyes were bright and clear and full of intelligence and curiosity. The baby that had been left alone to die was now a symbol of hope and strength to people all around the world. But there was still something that needed to happen. Dr. Okonkwo and her team knew that keeping Rafiki in the intensive care unit was not the right thing to do for the long term. Rafiki was a giraffe, and giraffes were meant to live in the open spaces of Africa, not in hospital rooms filled with machines and tubes. The team had to make a difficult decision. They had to figure out how to give Rafiki a life that was as close as possible to what a real giraffe should have. That is when Dr. Okonkwo made a phone call to the Giraffe Sanctuary Reserve, a huge protected area that had been created specifically to help giraffes that had special needs. This was a place where giraffes that could not survive in the completely wild world could still live something close to a natural life. The reserve had doctors and veterinarians and caregivers who would watch over Rafiki and make sure that the young giraffe stayed healthy and happy. The day that Rafiki was moved to the sanctuary was a day of celebration and also a day of sadness. The team at the Wildlife Center had grown to love this little giraffe. They had spent 4 months with Rafiki, watching the baby grow stronger every single day. They had fed Rafiki. They had cared for Rafiki when the baby was sick. They had celebrated every small victory with Rafiki. Saying goodbye was very hard, but Marcus and Dr. Yi, Okonkwo and the entire team knew that this was the right thing to do. Rafiki deserved to have more than just a hospital room, no matter how good that room was. Rafiki deserved to feel the African sun on the baby's back. Rafiki deserved to smell the wild grasses and the acacia trees. Rafiki deserved to experience the life that every giraffe should have. The journey to the sanctuary took 3 hours. Rafiki traveled in a special truck with comfortable padding and climate control, similar to the one that had brought the baby to the Wildlife Center 4 months before. But this time, Rafiki was awake and alert. This time, the young giraffe was looking out the window with excitement and curiosity. The baby could sense that something big was about to happen. When they arrived at the sanctuary, Rafiki was placed in a large enclosure that had been specially prepared. The enclosure had natural grass and real acacia trees and open sky. It was not completely wild yet, but it was much closer to wild than anything Rafiki had experienced before. When the gate to the enclosure was opened and Rafiki walked through, the young giraffe stood very still for a long moment. The baby giraffe looked out at the vast landscape and breathed in the African air. Something happened at that moment that nobody had expected. Rafiki walked to the edge of the enclosure and lifted the baby's head up high, the way that adult giraffes do when they are looking out at their territory. Even though Rafiki was still young and still had some problems with those twisted front legs, the baby giraffe stood there like a true king of the African savanna. It was as if Rafiki understood, deep in the baby's heart, that the baby had come home. Over the next several weeks, the staff at the sanctuary watched Rafiki carefully as the young giraffe adapted to this new life. They gradually opened the gates to larger and larger areas, letting Rafiki explore more of the sanctuary. The young giraffe became stronger and faster and more confident every single day. Rafiki learned to find the best leaves to eat. Rafiki learned to walk and even run, despite the twisted legs that would never be completely normal. But the most important thing that happened was something that nobody had dared to hope for. 2 years after being rescued from the desert, Rafiki was introduced to a female giraffe named Zuri. Zuri was a beautiful giraffe who had come to the sanctuary because she had been orphaned as a baby. When Rafiki and Zuri first met, they moved around each other slowly, getting to know each other. And then something wonderful happened. They became friends. They spent all their time together, eating and walking and playing in the sanctuary. And then, 1 year after Rafiki and Zuri met, Zuri gave birth to a baby giraffe. Rafiki had become a father. The little baby was named Simba, which means lion in Swahili, because this baby giraffe had come from such a strong and brave father. Simba was born healthy and strong, with no twisted legs, no birth defects, nothing wrong with this baby at all. The baby giraffe was perfect. The news that Rafiki had become a father spread around the world like wildfire. People who had been following Rafiki's story since the very beginning were crying with joy when they heard the news. News organizations sent reporters and camera crews to film Rafiki playing with little Simba. Videos of the baby giraffe running around the sanctuary and playing with its father were watched by millions of people on the internet. But for Marcus Richardson, the most important moment came 2 years later when he was visiting the sanctuary, and he saw something that took his breath away. Rafiki was walking through the grassland with Simba, and right behind them was another baby giraffe, this one named Kavi. Rafiki had become a father twice now. The little giraffe that was left to die in the desert had not only survived, but had created new life. The baby giraffe had started a family. Marcus fell to his knees and wept. These were tears of joy and pride and amazement. He thought about that day in the desert when he could have driven past without seeing the tiny, unconscious baby lying in the sand. He thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. If he had been 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later. If he had taken a different route. If he had decided to stay in camp that day. Rafiki would never have been rescued. Simba and Kavi would never have been born. Over the years, Rafiki lived a long and healthy life at the sanctuary. The giraffe that doctors had given only a small chance to survive became a symbol of hope and resilience. Rafiki lived to be 18 years old, which is an extremely long life for a giraffe. When Rafiki finally passed away, surrounded by the people who had loved and cared for the animal for so many years, the entire world mourned. Thousands of people shared stories about how Rafiki's journey had changed their lives. They talked about how the baby giraffe had taught them about courage and the power of refusing to give up. But Rafiki's legacy did not end with the giraffe's death. Rafiki's children and grandchildren continued to live in the sanctuary, carrying the genes and the spirit of their remarkable father forward into the future. Every time someone visited the sanctuary and saw the giraffes there, they learned about Rafiki's incredible story. They learned that sometimes, when human beings choose to care and choose to fight, they can change the outcome for animals that should have died. They learned that one person, in one moment, can make a difference that echoes forward through time and touches the hearts of people around the entire world. And they learned that hope, combined with determination and love, can overcome even the cruelest odds that nature has to offer.